Alright, hello, this is XP Scaling, and today we will be covering part 3 of Baki scaling, and today we will be covering, Baki and his fight with Gaia and the top elite military group that he also encounters. So, I hope you guys enjoy. So, starting off, this is following sometime after his fight with Hanayama as Baki again begins, some of his training, and he even showcases some understanding of other forms of martial arts. He's not a master of Chinese Kempo, but, he does have some familiarity with the practice. And as it states here, Baki is doing a training passed down through the ages of Chinese martial art. Its sole purpose is to train your reflexes. It makes use of the mechanisms that a bird needs to fly. In short, before a bird can soar, it needs to jump up and flap its wings. The training is to move your arm down the moment the bird intends to jump. By intercepting its movements, you prevent the bird from flying and thus seal its movements. But there is one more thing to consider when doing this with birds found in the wild, and that is that they have their own instincts and make sure you can continue training. You need to focus all your energy on them. And despite doing this training, his father ends up pulling up and says, let's have a fight. And, I want to see what you've built up in all the years that you've been living. And, at this point, Baki, despite how far he's come in his fight with Hanayama, in his fight with the Yasha ape, and, after losing the first time to Yuri the boxer, he realizes that, the only way he's going to have a chance against his father is if he gets some, battlefield experience. So that ends up leading him to Stridum, military general. And that ends up leading him to the most dangerous soldiers in the world. As they're somewhere hiding out in Japan, I guess training or, taking down any military group that they send their way. And please note, this military group of only 5 men took down 400 men and, a whole army supply of small vehicles. Essentially, they took down a whole small army. Not even, the commander-in-chief who's in charge knows what happened. He's trying to ask his subordinates, and he's just like, look, sir, we didn't see anything. This is what happened to all of us. They came in, they gave us an L, and then they left. And please note, they only did this with potentially either knives, their stealth, and their wits. As physical force, they did not destroy tanks, but they sabotaged and just, had fun with them. So at this point, Baki ends up going to the woods and gets snuck up on, on one of these guys. Look at him, he looks like a chameleon. Proceeds to rear end choke Baki. Chokes him out. Though, he thought he could fake them out. It sadly didn't work for Baki, as, the moment he tries, he gets sprayed in the face with some kind of gas. Then he gets tied up. They're about to kill him. Honestly, they probably could have killed him at this point. And this guy even says, or perhaps, we could take him apart and use him as food. No matter. It's the law of the jungle out here. And one of them even takes a knife, cuts his throat, and he's just like, oh god, they're really gonna kill me. Luckily for Baki, one of the guys here, he was apparently chewing on some herbs, spat it out, put it on his neck, like a good guy does. And, please note, again, while this was going on, Captain Stridum, he was being told of how dangerous the military group was, mainly Gaia. As he was even stated at one point that in terms of, survivability, he could survive a nuclear blast. Not in terms of durability, but that's just how good his survivalist skills are. As he's, talking with this older general, this old war veteran who, Captain Stridum, respects. He even states right here, He is what you would call a true mystery. It is said that you wouldn't even be able to kill him with an atomic blast. Now, obviously, he's not durable enough to survive an atomic blast, but like, in terms of how capable this Gaia guy is, it's more than likely he could survive one. Mainly just, with his skills, and he'd probably figure out a way to survive. But, when you consider the fact that if a nuclear bomb were to fall right now, and you're just left out in the middle of the open, you're gonna die. And this guy more than likely could just figure a way out with his survival skills how to survive. So, after some time passes, they left Baki alone, which was kind of dumb. He ends up escaping and ends up, taking on one of the elite soldiers. Bursts out, tries to kick him, ends up getting cut by this guy. Because, this guy's, top tier, soldier, that is, in the verse. And, actually does try to fight him. But, despite how skilled this soldier is, Baki only gets, only has, minor difficulty with this guy. And mainly just has to, evade and dodge his attacks. Mainly because this guy's not really fighting him with, his fists. He's not a grappler. He's, he's a warrior in this case. And he's, at this point, pulls out a knife, which he states, is the sharpest knife in the world. Though there should be, a little truth to this, as he chops down this small tree like if it was butter with, zero diff. And honestly, despite this guy now using potentially one of the sharpest knives in the world, it only gives Baki 2 cuts, and they're real light. As you can see here, he gives him a light cut on his wrist. And, something that should quickly be noted is that this knife actually could have chopped off his hand with how dangerous it is. And despite that, Baki baited him into cutting his other wrist and then proceeds to slam his elbow into this guy. Though sadly for Baki, he then... Well, luckily for Baki, he then proceeds, to call this guy out on, apparently it was an automated knife that he could, as you can see here, press a button, it launches out. And Baki, when that happened, already knew was going to happen. And, just kind of bluffed him, made fun of him, kicked him in the groin. He says, because you don't stand a chance with me, because, you're not a real fighter. For quick reference, that knife right there, I'm not going to even, attempt to say the name of it. It can be shot out at 39 miles per hour, which peak boxers usually can punch at 32 miles per hour. So that's, faster than a peak boxer's punch. Probably not, Mike Tyson's, but still. Though he does get snuck up again, Baki was able to sense the danger, as you could see here. He felt it, felt the guy's hands moving, jumped up, and, completely kicked him in the face. He didn't even know when the guy got right behind him. Though this guy, he is, tougher than the guy that he fought previously. Actually uses a little bit of tactics, kicks the dirt up into his eyes, gets him distracted, and then proceeds, to suplex him onto some rocks. Then, quickly suplexes him again while this is happening, and then haymakers Baki into some water. Well, into a nearby lake that was close by. He actually does try to drown Baki, though Baki, faked his drowning and then proceeds, to jump out of the water. Nearly, he probably could have killed this guy, but, he's not a killer at this point. Completely rear choked this guy. And Baki even states, wow, that was a really good lesson. Thanks for teaching me that. He chokes him out until he pisses himself. And at this point, Baki now has, a sense of, battlefield fighting. He realizes that if you're going to fight in a battlefield, you can't, fight like if you're a grappler. You have to fight to kill. Because it's either be killed or, get killed. And he then, proceeds to take the 2 elite soldiers, top elite soldiers in at least America, takes them as prisoners, proceeds, to pull up on, another guy. He was, in the bathroom. and proceeds, to just bully him, honestly. This guy, he gets bullied quite badly by Baki. And then, the guy actually had a acid capsule in his mouth, spits it at Baki, pisses him off, and then really gets, hit hard. Now, I wanted to bring this up mainly because, this is out of the five, three of the top elite soldiers are just like mollywopped by Baki. They're just getting pulled up and, bullied. And then, after he caught 3 out of the 5 elite soldiers, he positioned them in a way so that when the remaining 2 soldiers, came to like take on Baki, they weren't forced to fight him in the front, as there was a lake nearby where Baki positioned himself. They had to, group up, attack him from the rear, and it was exactly how Baki wanted him to be attacked from the rear. And they even had to praise him for that. They even said, wow, it doesn't seem the elites can stand a chance against that kid. That kid's sense of battle is the real thing. Even though he looks kind of like a cute little kid, I'm gonna have to show him one thing, and that is the real beauty of a fight. And they take advantage of Baki by dressing up as a bear that they killed, apparently. Rip out of it and try to jump him. At least one of the guys does. And Baki, at seeing this, gets a flashback and immediately goes to like beat down this guy. Legit was probably gonna like just cave in his head due to what his father previously killed the Yasha ape, and Yasha ape and Baki were kind of like friends, and Baki's father kind of just did that just to troll on him. And while this was happening, Baki did almost lose a foot, as this guy did pull out a blade. Though honestly, Baki didn't really have much trouble with this guy. It was mainly just the fact that these guys are using weapons. Had they fought him with just, fist to fist, they would have lost. Would have just completely lost. Tries to, throw his shoes at the guy to get, quick distraction. The other, elite soldier gangs up on Baki, gets some wire, ties him up. And they were actually going to kill him at this point. But luckily for Baki, he took that knife that was used against them, managed to cut the wire, proceeds to kick the knife into the guy's face. The guy then, rips it out here. He's just like, it's about time I reveal my secret identity. And it turns out 2 of the elite soldiers were twins. And, they usually, keep that to themselves due to the fact that how identical looking they are. They end up, confusing their teammates. So, tactically speaking, they usually have one of them be covered up, keep their identity secret, and they even have a special unique fighting style that they use. They even brag about it that they wanted to use it against, Yujiro Hanma, Baki's father. And even though it's kind of hard to say what this, grappling or, twin file sighting is, it should be made up of, teamwork, obviously, blade work, knife wielding, and, just ganging up on somebody with wire and, tear gas, potentially. As they do try to attack him from 2 different angles, one high, one low, using everything that they have. And at one point, Baki has to, let himself get, caught up by the wire just to evade and block out a knife. Though, this does leave him open a little bit. He gets, kicked in the face, takes it like if it was nothing. Then gets, rushed by the rear. Almost gets, thrown. And at this point, they're both coming in. He tries to trip him. And he even thinks that they're Gaia. One of them just pulls out a taser, because they're just pulling out random now. And at this point, one of the guys tries to, the guy with the knives tries to stab Baki. And Baki allows himself to get stabbed in, like, his muscle, flexes, and he prevents the knife to cut any deeper than what the guy's trying to cut him with. Proceeds to then grab him and then suplex him, both into the ground. He took down, and like in a simple after noon, probably in a day or two. The top elite soldiers in like America. But then it realized that this schmuck, right? This schmuck with the bandana turned out to be the real Gaia. He, violently has like a spasm and then, digs himself out. Now, quick context. I'm going to give a quick example. You know the movie Split and how there's that guy with the multiple personalities? That's essentially this guy. And, one of his personalities is Gaia. The other name, Japanese stuff, so I'm not going to even attempt to butcher his name. And, it turns out Gaia is the strong personality, the real personality that he calls himself. And he's so real, in fact, that, Baki, at this point, he's kind of cocky. He's just like, oh, wow, whatever, I'm just going to have to beat you up again. Proceeds to miss every hit on this guy. This guy is, like, evading so quickly. It looks like Baki's just passing through him. This should be very impressive considering the fact that Baki, when he first fought Yuri, did relative to him. After some training and fighting the Yasha ape, he states Yuri seems to have gotten 5 times slower. And if you take into account that Yuri should be like, a top tier boxer, most top athlete boxers can punch at 32 miles per hour. And Baki said that he's 5 times slower. That would mean Baki has to at least gotten 5 times faster. So that would mean that Baki, in terms of, combat speed, could probably punch at well over 100 miles and more than likely in the 160-mile ranges. And this guy's finessing him. Completely dodges all his attacks. He even speaks some nonsense and says, it's because your muscles in your body, they refuse to hurt my muscles in my body. And Baki's just like, yo, what the heck he's talking about? And then Baki at one point tries to grapple the guy, grabs him, and this guy, Gaia, proceeds to throw Baki and skip him like if he's a stone across a 10-meter long lake. He cleared 10 meters by being skipped like a stone. Now, please note the equation I used was, an equation used to figure out how you skip stones. And if we take that into consideration, that would mean Baki or Gaia exerted at least 50,808,320 pounds of force, or 25,404 tons. And that, in terms of, attack potency, would put him in the ranges of small town to town level. Now, here's the quick, mathematical formula that I used, for skipping stones or spheres. I had to change it up a bit for Baki. So if we say, Baki weighs 176 pounds, the water density is at least 0.969 grams. The impact at which, Baki skipped the water. He skipped the water at least 7 times. You take into the account the wetted area. I butchered that. And, that would be at least 38 feet. Then you take off, the attack angle at which, he was, I believe, thrown by, which is at least, 20-degree angle, which is, the average angle used for throwing stones. And then, sorry about that. The course angle. Oh my God, I really did butcher that. Is at least, the course angle being the direction in which he's thrown at is at least 140 degrees. You take that would equal F, as an F for force, would be, this mathematical equation right here. So that would be 176 times 0.969 times 7 squared. I couldn't do it on my phone. I'm sorry, guys. Times 38, parenthesis, 20 degrees plus 140 degrees would equal, the number I gave you guys up here. And despite that, Gaia then proceeds to finesse even further. that he could casually jump with a running start this 10-meter long lake. You could honestly argue that he jumped further as he landed right in front of Baki. And despite this, Baki states that he can't lose. Is this guy really as strong as my father? Is he or is he not? Proceeds to try to challenge this guy. This guy just, slaps him because, Baki's a little beta at this point. And then, proceeds to pick him up and slam him into the floor. Now, he does state, he gives out two statements, right? He gives out a statement saying, this slam would be the equivalent of me throwing you at top speed. And then he also gives out a second statement saying that this would also be the equivalent of falling off the 7th floor. Now, in terms of top speed for humans, right? The human body, if we lay down on a horizontal plane, could gain a maximum velocity of 120 miles per hour. So this could be interpreted in two ways. Either Gaia threw Baki with enough force to make it seem like he fell from the 7th floor of a building, which would mean, he hit the floor moving at 51 miles an hour. And when he hit, he hit with at least the equivalent force of 21,505 joules of force. That would be barely wall level. Or, which is more than likely what he meant to be interpreted, was, the top speed you could fall while your body, like I said earlier, is in a horizontal position, which would be, 120 miles per hour. That would still be about 352,800 joules. At that point, if he did throw him at that force, it would be like, in the small building to building level ranges of like destructive force, or in this case, attack potency. And then he proceeds, to throw him into water with the same throw. He does it hard enough to where Baki bounces and then sinks. Now, something that I am going to state is, considering the fact that, Baki bounced off the water, we can honestly say a guy did throw him in a way that was similar to how he skipped him across the water earlier. So, doing so, I had to rearrange the equation. And, that would still end up to being at least large multi... Oh, my goodness. Can't believe that this messed up my text, but large multi street block to at least town ranges of attack potency. I'm sorry for me butchering that in my text, but sadly it got butchered. And then upon this happening to Baki, who was taking an L at this point, his endorphins activated, and the guy instantly recognized that. He said, wow, you're using your endorphins. It's produced when your body undergoes pain that exceeds its limits. So that would mean that Baki, right, it took at least this, bare minimum wall level to like small town to, town level ranges of attacks to activate his endorphins. He proceeds, to jump out of the lake, 5 meters into the air to, get to Gaia. So something that should honestly be noted is at this point, upon this happening, he was able to finally be on par with Gaia, who previously was faster than Baki, who in their fight, was within like at least the, subsonic ranges of speed, meaning that he could be moving anywhere between 160 to 383.6 miles an hour. And that should be impressive, as right here he gets punched but like dodges it at the last moment, proceeds to then try to grapple him, and he's doing pretty decently now. He's more on like an even playing field. And they try to like out grapple each other. Almost gets kicked in the face, dodges it in a way that made Gaia lose his footing and tried to stomp out Gaia, right? But Gaia, again, he evaded. So at this point, Gaia is more than likely, in the subsonic plus ranges of speed, but I'll get into that a little later. Right? So at this point, Gaia actually fights Baki using psychological warfare in the middle of the fight. And it does work. Like, he says, oh, you can't even attack me. You don't even know your own mind. You don't know your own heart. He slaps him a few times. He gets him mad. Baki tries to, retaliate him, tries to really hit him again. As you can see here, he bounces off like a tree, bounces into another, and then launches himself. And then with a bamboo leaf, gets cut up by this guy. And then, he really did break Baki's will to fight. And at this point, he would have been defeated had his, body's instincts not kicked in, as his body instinctively gave this guy a mean uppercut, right? Closed his jaw, all his teeth, like most of his teeth came out. And this should be very impressive considering the fact that once, when Gaia first essentially went through this, mental breakdown and became Gaia, he was once blindfolded and shot at random with, AK-47s. And he was able to predict the bullets coming within range to him while being tied up and blindfolded. So if you want, you could arguably say, right, that Baki, oh my god, could scale to bullet level and supersonic ranges of speed. Or in this case, supersonic ranges of speed. But that's really if you want to argue that. So I'm going to say, to be more on the safer side, you should honestly say they're within the, subsonic plus, which is faster than what I said earlier. So it's more than likely possibly that they can move at 383.6 miles per hour, if not faster. So I'm going to say that more on the safe side. Seeing as, even though he did evade all this gunfire, he doesn't seem to do so consistently, as we're going to end up seeing Gaia actually does start to reach his limit. And, it does take a little time for Baki to adapt, as he did manage to land a blow on, Gaia, but it takes Baki time to adapt, to listen to his instincts and to what his body's telling him. So since it does take him time, he does get pummeled up a little bit until finally he gets another flashback of all the danger that he's been in. And right when he was about to get punched, he kicks this guy in the face. And then his body proceeds to start moving on its own. Low-key, it's ultra instinct. And, he realizes, yeah, my body would never betray me. It's my body. And quickly, Gaia gives an explanation. He's like, oh, I think I know what's going on. There have been times when a boxer has been knocked out, yet his body is still able to continue fighting. His body is simply recalling all of the practice and all of the fights that he has been through. But thanks to that, both his fighting spirit and his will came back. Meaning that he is in full control again, and that means there is no longer any danger. Due to this, Gaia does get the upper hand on, my boy Baki, but Baki proceeds to power through it, because that's just what Baki does. He evades another of his attacks, proceeds to slam him, right? He says, I'm going to teach you a lesson, boy. And at this point, Baki is fighting a serious Gaia, as one of, the other elite soldiers says, wow, he's serious. He intends to take this all the way. And my boy Baki here is still fighting. He's not giving in. He's saying, bro, I've come this far. I'm not going to give in to your BS. Proceeds to try to, slam him, shoulder throw him. Gets thrown, ragdolled. Baki, in this fight, this is where, he was thrown. And he's thrown quite high up, in fact, And Gaia, again, like I said earlier, in terms of speed, more than likely, subsonic plus, proceeds to grab him and jump up even higher, right? He jumped up high enough with Baki to where when they would fall, it would do some serious damage to Baki. So Baki used, right, a parachute landing technique to disperse any of the damage that he could have potentially had, right? He used this earlier to land. And this is even like, they're just like, oh, wow, yo, he used a 5-point landing. Wow. He took no damage. Wow. And, after this, Gaia did start to lose the advantage as, we do find out, even though Gaia, he is very strong, it's usually due to, like I said, the multi-personality change. As in that personality changed, he figured out how to master his adrenaline. I'll get more into that when I make his video. And proceeds, to get somewhat finessed on Baki. And here he gets ragdolled with a simple kick by Baki. And at this point, Baki, he gets over him, right? He starts to flex. He says, bro, it's thanks to these unnaturally developed muscles, right? It's thanks to all the effort that I put into my body for 10 years. I'm going to show you how healthy and strong my body is, boy. And at this point, this made Gaia actually quite desperate as he used a special yelling technique, right? It freaked everybody out as he then proceeds to suck up as much air that the human lungs can, right? He apparently did a special yoga training. Sucked up as much air and screamed so loud it was almost like a small explosion. You could see the effects that it had on his fellow teammates and even on Baki, right? And this was the effect that it had on the forest. This really was a small explosion. And, here's the result that it had on the wildlife, birds, insects. Luckily, he covered his ears, but, they're almost dead. This is what it did to Baki. He's seeing all blurry now. And please note, it takes at least about 150 decibels of noise, to burst your eardrums. And at least 185 to 200 decibels to kill somebody. So, that would mean that Baki got hit anywhere between 150 decibels to potentially even 200, though it's more than likely, 185, as he did survive. And, two of his teammates, while with their ears uncovered, did survive, and, their eardrums aren't busted. So you can honestly say it was more than likely at least 170 decibels of noise. That should be very loud, considering, it only takes 150 to burst your eardrums. And he takes this time to rear choke Baki. But Baki says, bro, I'm not going to fall unconscious. Watch this. Proceeds, to say, bro, I'm strong. I'm going to punch myself. See how many punches I could take while you choke me out. Makes Gaia loosen up his grip. Proceeds, to smash the back of his head into his face. And then shoulder throws him again. Kicks him in the back of the head, making him ragdoll again. And at this point, Gaia's just resorted to throwing water at high speed. And, considering how hard this guy can, throw Baki, he essentially, made that little cup of water he had in his hand into bullets and threw them right into his eyes. Took advantage of that, jumped up a tree, grabbed some vines, tied him up, and tried to choke him out again. But this time he was hanging him. And at this point, to make sure that Baki's death would actually happen, Gaia jumped down and rear choked him again until he died. And this actually did kill Baki, and he had an out-of-body experience when this happened. But as you could see with this flashback, you could see all that he's gone through right there real quick. And, he's struggling. And they even say it's over. And you could see here his soul, right? His soul leaves his body. He's just like, my pulse. Am I dead? No, this can't be. No, I refuse to die. There's no way I'm gonna die like this. And he comes back. So, quick point. This guy's will is strong enough to prevent himself from dying. I mean, I'm not saying that's, death hacks, but, like, he willed himself back into life. So, he just has a very strong will. Loki, he's a Green Lantern. And, the first thing he does is kick the branch that's choking him so, he could grab air. And, after this happening, his endorphins are probably maxed out. And, he apparently got a little strength boost from this. And, like, he legit, right, has Gaia hit him in the stomach, flexes his stomach, and breaks his wrist. Right? Because, that's just how chatty he is at this point. Proceeds, with a 2-finger technique, chokes out Gaia and defeats him. So, real quick, before Baki had activated his endorphins, he would have lost to Gaia. But due to him activating his endorphins, adapting, learning how to follow his body's instincts, and honestly having a much better physique, as this guy is essentially a glass cannon that can hit really hard. But, if you hit him hard back, his body can't keep up, as he's mainly focusing on adrenaline to keep his body running. So, Baki, in this run, quickly took some, at least, town to small town level ranges of attacks. Should move at least at subsonic to arguably bullet level ranges of speed. That would be anywhere between, 338 miles per hour to at least Mach 0.1, if not Mach 0.2. And it took at least a small town to town attack to actually awaken his endorphins. Just a quick summary real quick that you guys might like that. So this is the end of the video. Please make sure to dislike, unsubscribe, leave a hate comment if you really want to let me have it. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Till again, have a nice one. Peace.